Finance Committee to order for March 29, 2016. This evening we will once again start off with the discussion on the roads and the hopefully repair of the roads. For those of you who are here, I've provided a package with what the mayor set down as a proposal. So I'd like to start with that and just a synopsis of the mayor's proposal. Does everybody have, I know you got it as an email. And the mayor, rather than read the whole thing, the mayor says, I am proposing that we fund the cost as follows. Water and sewer reserves as proposed last week, which was $2 million. Phase 5 redirect, as previously agreed, was $6.78 million. That was agreed on June 3rd, 2014. For those who weren't here, that was agreed, well, it was agreed before we had an actual agreement, so it was never actually happened. We didn't bond it, but it was agreed. And that was when we were told that $6.78 million was indeed all it was going to cost for us to bond in order to complete the roads. That was in the presentation, PowerPoint presentation made that evening. It's the big number in dispute because we're over that number by about $13 million. Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, the mayor is proposing. Now the $6.78 million, that would go against the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. That was what was agreed to again. He is proposing that we take another bond for $5 million and apply that to the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. So that would increase rates above and beyond the $6.78 million. And then Chapter 90, which we talked about last week in the proposal that I brought forward. There is a belief that you can indeed bond a 10-year bond, not a 20-year. The mayor is proposing that we do and this would not happen. Every city and town signs an agreement that is for a 10-year agreement, and then you could bond on that. And because it's only 10 years, rather than be able to do 20 million over 20 years, you could, 10 million over 20 years, you could do 5 million according to this schedule, which would cost about $500-something thousand a year of the Chapter 90 money. And then Chapter 90 2017 funding is $650,000. In the plan that was submitted last week that I brought forward, that was $800,000. The total funding here would add up to $19,430,000. Low end range at $380 per linear foot would be $19,076. High end, they get $400 per linear foot on $19,818,000. Now, just based upon the previous estimates that we've received, first in 2014, then in April of 2015, and then about 6 or 7 weeks back, that number, I wouldn't take the number of 19 million to the bank, just because that number seems to keep going up. That is a synopsis of it. On the back, they provide what they believe the rates on the water bills would go up. So that is the mayor's proposal. I have put another proposal in front of you as well, just to go over it. It is an adapted proposal from last week, and that would be the Water and Sewer Enterprise Surplus $2 million, which is in the mayor's proposal. The city reserve, 1.7, and then the Chapter 90 funds, fiscal year 2017, still 800,000. The reason I believe that this is, there's two reasons I believe this is important. First off, we're already in the construction season. We had all winter to get something. If we're going to do anything, we've got to get going now. Secondly, and I know that I read letters in the very first meeting we had on this issue back in January. The mayor proposed initially last year that he was going to allocate $1.2 million of funding. We have that in the letter. I won't belabor the point. If anybody would like that letter again, it was provided in January. I'd be happy to provide that letter. That $1.2 million is gone. So we were promised $1.2 million toward the road last year. In September, we got a subsequent email that told us, well, I'm not going to be able to give you $1.2 million. I'll give you $900,000. And now we get a letter that tells us, I'm not going to give you $900,000. I'm not going to give you anything for this year that we're already in, but in fiscal year 17, I'll give you $650,000. So we started at $1.2 million, went down to $900,000. That was supposed to be in fiscal year 2016. That's all gone. And now we should settle for $650,000, and we should give the ratepayers a rate increase, because I don't know why. So I leave this proposal at the future, if you look down below, same way you get to the $20 million number. The $6.78 million, I don't think there's a dispute in terms of us having agreed to that number, because that wasn't what was going to finish it. Then I propose that we take, rather than $5 million in Chapter 90, we take $6 million in Chapter 90 funds, which would, over a 10-year, not 20-year, but a 10-year period, $6 million would amortize out, $679,000 a year at 2.5% interest. The current rates are closer to 2% on a 10-year bond, but to be conservative. Again, I think the mayor who managed this plan, who managed this road work, needs to have more skin in the game before we go hitting the ratepayers. He essentially spent $13 million more, and so that's what Chapter 90 money is for. And then finally, you'll see a figure that says, I believe we should bond out rather than some of the things that are in CDBG right now. And we have done this in the past. We should bond out the remaining amount. This would also incent people to try to get these costs down, but we should bond out $2.7 million of CDBG money, which, again, over the course of time, would be somewhere slightly under $300,000 a year of the CDBG money. We just ended, a bond we had done for the roof on Malden High roof. There's $400,000 left over that's going to be spent. And again, if you look on the CDBG plan that just came out today, there's a proposal in there to spend $200,000 on a health center in the high school. Again, something nice to have, but I think we ought to finish things that we're doing or have done before we go out to do nice to haves. And as you all have seen, we don't have excess money in the operating side of the budget, so how we would operate that going forward, something else would have to be cut. But again, CDBG money can only be used in certain wards, but certainly in Ward 1, Ward 7, much of Ward 5. I don't understand that, but it's true. much of Ward 5. Those streets, you could do the sidewalks. I've left you on the second page, CDBG rules, and it says repair of streets, sidewalks, public buildings, parks, in CDBG areas on an interim basis. That has been done in the past, but we could do all of that without adding additional money and bonding to the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, which would be, once again, a backdoor tax to the taxpayers without their consent. So that's a proposal, an adapted proposal of what I brought forward last week. I'll open it for discussion. Thank you. Councilor Condon.
Thank you. What did we receive this past year in Chapter 90 monies?
We received a total of 1.3 million and some change.
1.3 million.
1.3 million. However, because of the rough winter, the city was allocated about $350,000 more than normal.
So normally it would be 950,000.
It'd be somewhere between $900,000 and $950,000. In the last, and the controller and myself both did this. We went back 5 years. The lowest it's ever been in that time was $704,000, but it has consistently gone up into the $900,000 over the last few years.
So next year we'll sign another 10-year agreement. Will they scale it out? How much it can go up and how much it can go down? So we know how much we've got coming in for 10 years to cover this bond?
You don't know how much you're going to get. You can only base that really upon history and how they've been doling it out. But our other option to get the roads done is really probably to hit the operating account anyways. So this would at least put us in a situation where you probably, unless we really hit it deep, but even in the last recession, they kept this money coming. So to keep jobs going, I think.
The thing is, it makes me a little uneasy that it's going to cost us almost $680,000 to go out to bond for these $6 million. Plus the fact that I know they commit another $100,000 out of the Chapter 90 funds to do all our crosswalks. They go under repair and the striping of the streets, approximately $100,000 a year. And they have it on a 3-year program to do that. So now we're up to like $780,000 of the Chapter 90 money, hoping that the state doesn't do a Dixie on us and pull some of that funding back. It doesn't leave a lot of room to feel comfortable to go out to bond for 10 years, for me.
I agree with you, Councilor. I don't think we can feel comfortable with anything here. I think the problem is we've got a $7 million operating deficit, and got to come up with some solution to finish these roads, that's all. Or not. We can determine we're not going to do them. I don't know how that's going to go over with the people whose streets were ripped up now.
Yeah. Naturally, you want to do as much road work as you can. But to me, all right, to go into a street and just rip up entire sidewalks, we're not in a position to do that. And that may not be a nice position to take, but you can see some of these streets. Not all the panels of the sidewalks are bad. I noticed on a lot of the streets, Webster Street did panels of them, not the entire sidewalk, you know. So I'm sure there's streets to scale this project down that we can save money on. I think once we do an overlay of the street, you're committed certainly to do the ADA stuff, but that doesn't mean you have to do the entire sidewalk of the entire street. You know, I mean, if my sidewalk's up 3 or 4 or 5 inches, and some elderly person's gonna trip and get hurt, naturally you want that panel taken up. But if it isn't, and if we can avoid taking the curbing up, that's a very big cost in this entire project. So I think it's gotta work both ways. Naturally, we've gotta go out and try to get as many of these roads done as we can, but also there has to be some give back too by all of us to not to do it in a way that we can't afford to do it. And I'm talking about the entire sidewalk and stuff. You know, we're just not in a position to do it. And I think people understand that somehow this spun out of control. I don't know who's to blame, because if I was still here, I'd be fighting for what I could get for the streets that needed it. I wasn't here, but I'm sure everybody, when they were in their ward, were fighting for different stuff to try to get it done. And we kind of lost control of the cost on this whole thing. So I don't want to blame anybody, but I really think we've got to get control back on this thing. And we kind of got to sock it up a little bit on some of these streets that are looking to get overlaid and some of their patches. There's some streets that maybe can go with a patch because they've been in deplorable. I have one street in my ward that I know. I wouldn't even ask anybody to overlay it. You know, so I think there's got to be some give back from us and find out how we can reduce the costs as well as trying to secure the money. Also, we have to take into consideration we're behind the 8 ball on this budget coming up. It's not going to be fun. You know, we're starting out over $6 million. And I know you're talking about construction season, and you're right, you know, but be interesting to see how this budget comes in and where the money's gonna come from. If it's coming from reserve, you know, are there positions in the budget that are vacant, that are funded? You know, so personally, I'd like to take a look at that budget in a week or two before, and I don't know if your plans are to try to vote this thing or meet again or not. I'd like to absorb everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you very much. I would like to echo Councilor from Ward 2's sentiments. I think that it's very important that we take a breath here and try to figure out exactly our finances are going to look like. I know we're going to be getting the budget. It's going to be a very bad year for us in terms of how this budget's going to look. I think it's really important for us to see that first, to at least have some type of foundation in which we can make decisions on. I don't mean to be pessimistic. I personally think that we're going to be going into a recession later this year. If we look at the trend in terms of presidential elections, 2008 was a really tough year, and we're here again. We're in a housing bubble, and I think it's very important for us to not bury our heads in the sand and pretend that that's not coming up. And we need to make sure that we're protecting our city finances and our family's finances in the same way. So I do think it's very important that we see the budget first before we make any decisions on this. One of the other things I would like to say is if there's opportunities for us to reduce the scope, and like the councilor from Ward 2 said, by not replacing perfectly good sidewalks, I think that's one way that we can reduce the scope. I think it's very important that we seriously look at what needs to be done before we make a decision on this. A good example is this past week, Main Street was done over from Salem to Florence Street. It was a war zone prior to this being done, and a mill and overlay was done, and it looks great. So I don't think that we always need to do a full depth reconstruction. If it's good enough for Main Street, which is our main thoroughfare, I think it can be good for a lot of the side streets that we're discussing. So I do think that we need to look at the scope, try to reduce the scope, and keep costs down so that we're not doing the city to more debt over the next so many years. Thank you.
Anybody else on the committee?
Councilor.
Council Con.
Yeah, I'll yield to anybody else who wants to speak. The other thing that concerns me is the Water Enterprise Fund. How much of this money is going towards these streets and sidewalks? Because as you know, that Water Enterprise Fund is to do water replacement and hydrants. And if we're gonna use that money to do sidewalks, I don't think that's acceptable under the law. And I even question overlaying an entire street. I know, like the enterprise fund, if you replace the water line and you do the patch of the street, and that would cover that. But to overlay the entire street from curb to curb, I think it's questionable by using all this water enterprise money, if it can be used for that. You know, and we have to make sure that the money's being used the proper way.
Well, I will answer that the best way that I can on that. The controller told us last week we can, but long before you were gone, we were using SRF funds under the former mayor on a much smaller scale. We were going not $10 million out of whack, but we were, anytime we ripped up the pipes, put down the patch, we did curb to curb. But you're absolutely correct about the sidewalks, but I do not believe, almost certain, that in the plans here, that we're not talking about doing all the sidewalks over. We've already stopped that last year. You brought up Webster Street, you brought up certainly every street off of Webster Street. We have a patchwork of some sidewalks that are torn up, others that were left down, just because that's what they started. So what's here at this stage, based upon the number of streets that are torn up, all we'd be putting into water and sewer enterprises, 6.78 million, plus the 2 million. So it's less than half of the entire project. We'll be lucky if that does the resurfacing of the streets. Clearly the resurfacing of the streets is more than half of the project. So I'm really, from a financial standpoint, not concerned about that. I would be concerned about that if we were to add another $5 million that the mayor is proposing into the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. In terms of how this will affect our budget, it does not. These lines, whether it's the mayor's or the other proposal that's in front of you today, in neither case will it affect the operating budget. So this idea of waiting to see the operating budget, you can't use Chapter 90 money in the operating budget. You can't use Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund in the Chapter 90 money. You can't bond it out and put it into the Water and Sewer Enterprise. So that is not a concern. However, I would say this much to you, that we've already been operating with the mayor 3 times in terms of what it's going to cost us. We have not gotten a correct figure yet. The best way that I can think of, because the mayor doesn't want to use the reserve. He says that, right? Because he wants to use that on the operating budget. The best way I think we can incent the mayor, 2 ways. To actually do the right thing here is to make a plan that has reserve in it and Chapter 90 in it. Because if he doesn't spend it all, then he's got it left over. So it incents people to do the right thing if you indeed don't want to spend all that money. If we give him $4.5 million for the current year, which we already committed to because we haven't designed the streets, are we going to go back and have him redesign those? Not suggesting that for the lower portion, but we've already committed the money to design over the winter. That's already done. They're ready to go or not go. We can pull back and we won't get we won't get streets done this year. Or we can say, let's go forward And Mr. Mayor, if you want to save reserve, if you want to save your own Chapter 90 money, do a better job. Cut costs, find ways to cut costs. Can't think, and whatever's left over is left over. So we won't have to go out for as much. Okay. Council Con.
Yeah, I wasn't here with this Phase 5 redirect as previously agreed. Could you explain that? If is that bonding, and how's that bond being paid?
Yes, that was on June 3rd of 2014. The financial team and CDM Smith and the engineering team came down at the behest of the mayor with a plan that they had put together. On that plan, they laid out, here's how we're going to do the rest of the streets. This is going to finish everything. Part of the funding was SRF funding. Part of it was this $6.78 million. And the debate at that time, the only debate at that time was, well, should it be regular bonding or should it be bonding that goes against the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund? We did approve that plan reluctantly that evening because there was some doubt as to the ability to get all these streets done. The engineer, Bob Button from CDM Smith, and the controller said this plan is good and we can get it done for, if we give you that $6.78 million, June 3rd, 2014.
And who's giving us that?
We agreed to bond that.
Okay.
But we said, the council as a whole said, if we bond this, you're promising us that all these streets that are out there will be completed. And we were told that absolutely that was the case. So we had agreed to bond the $6.78 million at that time. We have never done it because within 9 months, they came back and said it's not $6.78 million. You're going to have to give us close to $14 million. And we said, well, what the heck is happening? We called for an audit. Unfortunately, that has not worked out because of the auditor. But in the meantime, we gave additional funds just so we could keep the streets, get some street progress being made, because some streets have been out there for going on their fourth full year. And what has happened is, in the meantime, once again, in January, we were told, well, that number that we told you in April, that number is not correct. It's really about 20 million. So it's about $13 million more than we were told 2 years ago.
So this 6.7 million would be bonded over how many years?
That would be bonded over 20 years.
20 years would be paid from our...
Water and sewer.
Over 20 years.
That's correct, and we agreed to that in June of 2014. But at the time, we said, that's it. We're not putting any more to water and sewer. You know, and numerous councilors asked, is this it? Will this complete all the streets? And the answer was yes.
So that 6.78 million would cost us, what, about $725,000?
That $6.78 million, according to the schedule that we've been provided on the back of the mayor's, would cost us $542,000 in 2018, $532,000 in 2019. He's got the schedule up in the back. That's why I believe that the number I gave you at $6 million, and 2.5% interest is a conservative number. It's something that, probably is safe.
But yours is 10 years, it's fine.
That
makes a difference.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Matheson.
Thank you, Chairman. We heard a couple things. One was from the councilor of Ward 2, Mr. Condon, whole sidewalk replacements was never part of the plan. I know you mentioned that last week, you mentioned it again this week, never part of the plan. If you're thinking of perhaps Highland Ave, that came from small square money, that was not part of the water main replacement. What was part of the water main replacement project was where we do find panels, not whole streets, not whole sidewalks, but panels of sidewalk that are in gross disrepair. Those panels are replaced, and that has a rather minor cost associated with it. As far as we letting things get out of control, I can say that the council received a proposal from the mayor going back to the CIP. He proposed the funding in the project, we approved the funding in the project, and since then it's become over budget and over schedule. I'm not pointing the finger, but I can't say it was the council managing these projects. That's done by the mayor and the vendors, but with respect to this particular plan, I think this is a good faith effort by the mayor to bridge a gap that we do need to ultimately bridge. I understand some of the concerns. Borrowing against the enterprise fund will raise rates against the taxpayer. And the 10-year Chapter 90 bond, I'm reading here that there's a contract for Chapter 90 that expires in June 2017. And it's not until then that we'll see if they renew for another 10-year contract that we can bond against. I'm wondering if perhaps we can consider recommending this plan favorably as to certain components while leaving out, while we wait to see how concrete it is, the Chapter 90 10-year bond. I think it's a good faith showing that he wants to put in $650,000 from the 2017 Chapter 90 funding, $2 million from the water and sewer reserves. And with respect to whether or not those can be used by roads, Councilor, I heard that you had that question, a legitimate question. I do believe that our controller and the mayor's office have spoken with bond counsel as to where they can apply those funds. I think they've done that diligence. So I do believe that these funds can be used for certain components of this overall project. And the Phase 5 redirect, we've debated that in the past. Looking at these numbers, that looks to be about $9,430,000 that I think that we have a lot of agreement on. I just want to say that I do see this as a good faith effort, and I'm encouraged by it. Clearly, we're not going to do $19.5 million worth of work in the next construction season. So perhaps this is something that we can take a bite-sized piece of and make sure that we don't miss this construction season. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Any other councils? I would actually agree that there's a plan in front of us. I absolutely disagree with you that $5 million to the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, above and beyond the $6.78 million, which we agreed to and got an agreement on. We're not talking about $6.78 million now. We're talking about $14.78 million. $14.78 million being charged against the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, not 6.78. That's over 100% increase. That is unfair to the ratepayers.
Not disputing that.
Do I have any motions? I just want to think about it. Motion to table? We got a second by Councilor Seeker. All in favor? Aye. Councilor Condon? The next thing up on the agenda was indeed participatory budgeting. We're at 7 o'clock again, so I would suggest I would take a motion to table that till next week as well.
Motion.
I got a motion by Councilor Matheson, yes, a second by Councilor O'Malley. All in favor? Aye. Motion to adjourn. Councilor Condon, Councilor Matheson seconds. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.